Alright, who's ready for the third volume of Archetype Rematch? We got 60 more new juicy support cards, well, most of them, and yeah, we have also some cards which I actually forgot to mention or talk about in the previous video because keeping track of the 150 plus archetypes I've reviewed so far can be a bit of a pain in the ass, so yeah. We'll start things off with one of said cards I forgot to talk about last time, and that is the Predaplant support card, Starving Venomy Lethal Dose Dragon, which is the manga equivalent of Greedy Venom Fusion Dragon. And when you might be asking yourself, you manga readers, where the hell is Starving Venomy Dragon? He doesn't exist at this point. Yep, he's still a manga exclusive, and I have, for some reason, they decided to print the evolution first and then the actual monster. But anyway, as this monster is, its only relation to the archetype is that it's a dark dragon, that it spews counters, and that's about it. I mean, you can run it if you feel like it, but good luck trying to find sufficient resources to invest into this guy, because this thing requires 3 dark pendulum monsters in order to be brought out. Oh boy, and as we all know, Predaplants only have a grand total of 1 pendulum monster, and how many of those do Predaplants run? None, nada, 0, nilch, so yeah. You're probably going to have to resort to some generic Dark Pendulum support in order to bring this thing out. Alright, moving on. Oh boy, we have more Blue Eyes support cards. Why? But thankfully it's only 1 card, so here's Deep of Blue Eyes, and I've gotta say that is one of the most unimaginative names I've ever seen in a card. And it's utterly terrible. I have no idea who thought that this card and design was a good idea. It's basically a way harder to summon Keeper of Dragonic Magic, but in return you also get to get to add ritual spells, and mind you, any ritual spells at that. If you really crave a ritual build in Blue Eyes, then just run incantations, damn it. They are way more consistent than this piece of crap. And, of course, if you crave fusion spell searching, then just run Offris Scorpio, Darling Cobra, or Keeper of Dragonic Magic. Yeah, that's all I've gotta say about this thing. Yeah, not worth your time, and definitely an honest mistake in my opinion. Alright, time for another pair of cards I forgot to talk about during last time, and that is the new Red Eyes support card, that being their awesome Link monster, Darkness Metal, the Dragon of Dark Steel. God, I love that name. It's a Link 4, has Saryuja arrows, that being up, down, bottom left, and bottom right. Requires 2 or more effect monsters with the same type and attribute. And it's basically a very nice card for basically any other Exort spam engine except for Link monsters, because this thing can revive any monster, which can then be proceeded to use as material for any other form of summon at the cost of, if you're using it for a Synchro or Fusion summon, the monster goes to the bottom of the deck instead of the graveyard. If it banished the card, and I would have... It might have been a bit too much broken for what it's supposed to do, because some cards have very easy access to looping back their own banished stuff, so kind of understandable. So it could be considered as some sort of archetypal Noble Dragon Magician for it, maybe. But anyway, as great as this thing is, it might not see that much play anymore due to the fact that Master Rule 5 is coming, and judging from the fact that even in Master Rule 4 this thing did not see that much play. It still did see some play. I even included it, I think, in the side deck of my Dragon Maid deck review when I did that video. So yeah, it's a very nice it's a very nice addition to the archetype. Provides some swarming nature to the deck, basically begging number 42 Galaxy Tomahawk to get unbanned. So yeah, absolutely run this guy in your Red Eyes build as soon as you can. Great card. And another card I forgot to talk about is a Phantom Knight support card that, well, being Dark Rebellion Xyz Dragon support card, that being Dark Antelian Dragon. Also, it's a manga card. It's a Pendulum Scale 10, and yeah, pretty high Pendulum Scale, gotta say. And I think this is the manga equivalent to Odai's Rebellion Dragon, I believe, because it's also a rank 7, requires two level 7 monsters just like Rebellion Dragon. And it's basically a Dark Rebellion Xyz Dragon effect, only this time it's a quick effect, so if you can make this consistently, then I'd say run this over Dark Rebellion Xyz Dragon, but since Phantom Knight's launch is unlimited once more, you can rank up into Dark Requiem Xyz Dragon, which is a better choice in my opinion, which then you can use rank up Magic Astral Force in order to rank him up into Odd-Eyes Raging Dragon, or even this thing, so yeah, this thing actually got better. In the time I was supposed to talk about it until now. If I talked about it in the first review, or in the previous, I should say, Archetype rematch, it wouldn't receive nearly as much as praise because of the banned Rank Up Magic Phantom launch. So, yeah, that's pretty much it about this. Then we have Heraldics, who got new support in form of one spell card, Heraldry Charge. It's essentially an instant rank 4 monster, so yeah, it locks you into Psychic and Machine monsters. I have no idea why it locks you into Machine monsters though, because the archetype has no Machine monsters whatsoever, so yeah, you can summon that Gear Gigantex. Yeah, that's the only machine rank 4 monster that I can think of right now, so yeah. It's a nice staple for the archetype, and yeah, good card. Next up we have Speedroids. They received 2 cards worth of support, first of which is Speedroid Card Turbo. This is a level 3 tuner, and it's basically a nice combo extender for Terror Top and Tectomborg, as it has the special summoning condition of Tectomborg. And you can also banish it and one Speedroid monster from your graveyard, and all wind monsters you control get 800 attack until the end of this turn. I mean, you can, sure, if you want to, but you're not going to do that since you're only going to be using its special summoning effect, since basically this enables you to summon Trishula without using your normal summon. So yeah, that's how far we've come in Speedroids, so yeah. This basically makes Trishula at least a 2-off staple in the archetype, so yeah, great addition to the archetype. And next up, we have their other monster, Speedroid Block and Roll. This is a level 4 with 1000 attack and 800 defense, and it's a token spawner. Upon being used as Synchro material, which is basically really good. An archetypal Synchron carrier is a nice addition to the archetype. It's a level 4. I would maybe prefer if it was a level 3, so it could maybe play into the effects of some other monsters such as Tectomborg and Terratorp. So you can also have a small rank 3 agent at your disposal. But hey, Card Turbo is a thing, so let's not nitpick for it any longer. But yeah, the token's level also becomes the level of the Synchro monster you summon. So basically, if you summon Clearwing Synchro Dragon or Fast Dragon or whatever, that is a level 7. Oh wait, yes, I forgot that you cannot exceed summon using tokens. But hey, you can at least use said token to go into a higher level monster if you have a tuner remaining. For example, going into Clearwing and then using the token to go into Kite Drake, for example, and maybe use Kite Drake's effect to nuke the field or negate the effect and have Clearwing gain the attack value, or even on Crystal Wing. So yeah, that's some nice combo extension and OTK strategies here. So yeah, Speedroids were handled pretty good. And yeah, next up on the lineup we have the Red Archetype. I'm really glad about this support wave. It's phenomenal. First of which we have the new Resonator, that being Crimson Resonator. It's another level 2, just like the Red Resonator, and I think he has... Oh wait, he has 100 more attack points than Red Resonator and has less attack points. So yeah. And you cannot special summon monsters from the extra deck during the turn you activate this effect except Dark Dragon Synchro monsters, which is perfectly fine. If you control monsters, you can special summon him from the hand, and if the only other monsters you control is exactly one Dragon Synchro monster, you can special summon up to 2 Resonator monsters from your hand and or deck except Crimson Resonator. So yeah, it's a really nice swarm card, and it plays into the nature of their multi-tuner boss monsters, one of which is the new addition to the Archetype, which we'll get into soon. So yeah, decent card to consider running. Then we have the reference to the familiar of Red Nova, that being Red Familiar. Look at him, he's so happy to be here. Anyway, he's a level 4 Fiend, and which you can tribute one Fiend monster, then target one Dragon Synchro monster in your graveyard, special summon it in defense position, but negate its effects. You can banish this card from your graveyard, then target one Dragon Synchro monster you control, and declare a level from 1 to 8. That monster becomes that level until the end of the turn, and you can only use each effect once per turn. You can tribute this thing in order to set up its graveyard effect, but I'm not sure what the point of the graveyard effect is supposed to be. Yeah, I kind of get it. Use this graveyard effect to lower the monster's level if you have some higher level tuners on display, so you can go into their higher level monsters. But you'll rarely be using this sort of effect, and the best thing about this card is the revival effect, which the Archetype already has plenty of other choices, and even some generic support, such as Return of the Dragon Lords, for example. So I'm sure you can actually skip this one. You're not missing too much. And for the final monster of the lineup, we have Red Supernova Dragon, and this is the is the archetypal Quasar we've been waiting for folks. It's got it all. Nukes the field, negates harder than anything else, requires 3 tuner and 1 or more non-tuner non-tuner synchro monsters, any synchro monster, mind you. And yeah, has the 500 attack point boost from Red Nova Dragon, the original one, so yeah, it also cannot be destroyed by your opponent's card effects, and it's a freaking beast. It's still not part of the TCG as of this moment, but if it actually arrives in the TCG, I'm picking this thing up. It's amazing. So yeah, an absolutely fantastic boss monster and absolutely worth running. Next up, we have their Spell and Trap lineup, first of which we have Command Resonator. Basically, you can discard a Resonator monster to add any level 4 or lower Fiend monster from your deck to your hand. Great consistency boosting, is also a quick play for some reason, and yeah, for all of you Fiend deck enthusiasts, you can basically make better use of this card, since you basically know at the back of your hand what this card can actually search out and what the best search options for this are, so you're about to get some really good mileage out of this thing. And now Burning Soul is interesting. Basically, if you control a level 8 or higher Dragon Synchro monster, you can add any card from your graveyard to your hand, which is ridiculous. And then after this thing resolves, you must immediately Synchro summon a monster. So yeah, it can work as an archetypal formula Synchron kind of card, and it's also a really nice recycling tool. But you're locked out of... no, you're not locked out of anything. Your opponent is locked out of targeting the synchro monsters with card effects, which is amazing. But you're most likely going to be summoning the Red Supernova Dragon with this thing, so which already has a built-in targeting protection, so not that necessary, but also a good thing to have if you're summoning something like Tyrant Red Dragon Archfiend or the original Red Nova. So yeah, fantastic card, and you should always run 3 of these. It's a quick play as well. And our final card is Red Rain, which is a trap card, but a pretty good trap card. Simple as that. Basically, upon controlling a level 8 or higher synchro monsters, you banish everything in the monster lineup your opponent controls. your opponent cannot do jack and shit. What's not to like? It's simply amazing. But if this thing were a quick play spell card, I would have maybe loved it a bit more, but it might have been a bit too broken if it was like that. So I'm not gonna complain too much. So yeah. And of course, it has actually a decent recycling tool. That being, if you a Dark Dragon Synchro monster is synchro summoned to your field, you can basically add this card from your graveyard to your hand, which is fantastic. And not to mention that even if you use this thing again after this effect was applied, this thing does not get banished. So you can actually continue to recycle this thing over and over again if you can manage to reserve that many resources for summoning Dark Dragon Synchro monsters. So yeah, the opponent know what hit them then. Alright, and that was it for the red archetype. Now it's time for two more cards which I skimmed over previously. First of which is a new Fright for support card. That being the level 10 fusion monster, Dangerous Fright for Nightmare, which requires an Edge Imp monster and 2 Fluffle monsters. And it's alright. It gains some attack points for each fairy and fiend monster in your graveyard. It had to be said because Fluffles are fiends and Edge Imps are Fluffles are fairies and Edge Imps are fiend monsters. And yeah, if it also destroys a monster while it was fusion summoned, you can send a Fright for Fluffle or Edge Imp monster from your deck to the graveyard, meaning it can get more attack points. Basically, you can set up Fluffle wings for the what was it called, Toy Vendor draw combos and search. So yeah, it's a pretty okay addition to the card. Pretty okay addition to the archetype. What am I saying? So yeah, it's run any number of these. It's not the most optimal thing to run since when you're using multiple monsters, 3 or more specifically, you're most likely summoning Fright for Tiger, which is still a better option in my opinion, despite these things' added benefits. Next up, Raid Raptor's got a new support cards, and that is actually a Link monster, Raid Raptor Wise Strix. This one requires 2 Darkwing Beast monsters, points bottom left and bottom right, and yeah, if it is Link summoned, you can special summon at the level 4 Darkwing Beast monster from your deck in defense position, which is pretty damn admirable. The archetype has a pretty fair share of those targets already, Vanishing Lanius being the most obvious one, since you can actually continue to swarm the field over and over again. Fuzzy Lanius is a good option if you don't have him all in the hand already, although I prefer special summoning of Fuzzy Lanius with its own effect because it's much more worth it. And yeah, and then we also have this effect. With your Raid Raptor Xyz monster effect is activated, you can set a rank up magic spell directly from your deck, and if it's a quick play spell, it can be activated this turn. You can only use each effect, of course, once per turn. And not to mention that this thing rank up magic search effect is not limited to the archetypal ones. You can also search out stuff like Numeron Force, Argent Chaos Force, if it ever comes back, and Phantom Knight's Launch if you feel really Phantom Knight-ish about it. So yeah, it's a alright card, definitely worth 2 or 3 spots in the extra deck. Next up we have Thunder Dragons. Thunder Dragons received a grand total of 1 support card, that being a level 9 Thunder Dragon Sky Rumble. And it's a fine card, but the main problem I have now, as opposed to when this thing was announced and came out, is that in the most recent ban list, Thunder Dragons got heavily hit due to the banning of Colossus. So yeah, is this a solid replacement? Maybe it'll have to. Some time will have to pass in order to see how this thing sinks in with as the community's preferred choice of boss monster for the archetype. But in terms of generally everything, it's a fine card with good stats for a boss monster. And yeah, Rank 9 plays are not something that Thunder Dragons are particularly fond of doing, but still you can actually make a funky generator build with this thing as the centerpiece in Thunder Dragon, since the Colossus is banned and the game plan of the Thunder Dragons could be slightly altered to what I reviewed before, so yeah. And next up we have the Rose Dragon support cards. We have a level 3 Rose Princess, which has a special summoning condition if your opponent only controls a monster, and if you summon her this way, it is treated as a tuner, and you can also discard her in order to add a White Rose Cloister from your deck to your hand, which, as you all remember, is a field spell I covered in the previous volume. Now, the problem I have with this thing is that it's not your standard field searcher with huge stats, but yeah, she has some other huge stats, as I can see. Anyway, back on topic. The charm of these field searches is usually that they have really a good stats of an average of 18 or 1900. So you can either summon them and make them a huge beat stick, or basically discard them for an unimportant field spell. It's perfectly fine. It's even treated as a tuner if it gets special summons. So yeah, couldn't hurt at 1 or 2. Next up we have Sacred Beasts. Sacred Beasts actually got quite a bit of support, and I was wondering why, but then I saw, well, one of the cards was actually from a booster pack, but then I saw that Sacred Beasts are actually getting a structure deck based around them. So there's all the explanation you need. Their first monster is Dark Beckoning Beast, a level 2 with 0 attack and defense, and if this thing is normal summon, you can add any of the Sacred Beasts from your deck to your hand, or a card that specifically lists any of the Sacred Beasts from your deck to your hand, except this thing, of course. And you can only use this effect once per turn, and during your main phase you can normal summon one Fiend monster with 0 attack and defense in addition to your normal summoner set, and you gain this effect once per turn. So simply put, you summon this, normal summon this, search out whatever you want, and then tribute this in order to summon Dark Summoning Beast, which can easily summon the Sacred Beast card. But when we're on the topic of easily summoning Sacred Beast cards, their own personal summoning conditions have been significantly eased up thanks to the certain support cards, and not to mention that Raviel got a retrain. Yeah, you thought that all the Sacred Beasts would get retrains, but hey, it's at least material for Volume 4, I guess. Raviel, Lord of Phantasm, Shimmering Scarper is the retrain, has the exact same stats as Raviel, and I believe the same level as Raviel. So yeah, it has the exact same summoning condition, but it actually you can actually tribute any 3 monsters as opposed to 3 Fiend monsters, which the original Raviel requires. You can also discard this to then target a Raviel, Lord of Phantasms, the original you control. For the rest of this turn, its attack becomes doubled, and also it can attack all monsters your opponent controls once each. If this card is in your graveyard, you contribute 1 monster, add this card to your hand, and you can only use each effect once per turn. But yeah, it's a funky little support card for Raviel, and quite the good card, since Raviel is, in my opinion, the best of the Sacred Beast, because Fiend monsters have some really nice support options for bringing out 3 of themselves, so Raviel becomes piece easy to summon, and his discard effect, this thing's discard effect, even makes him an even bigger beast. So yeah, I believe decks based on pure Raviel are going to be heavily appreciated and heavily more played now that this thing has arrived. And it's a level 10, it's not a very welcoming stat line. I mean, you can also use this as a rank 10 option, so yeah, but I would have loved it if this thing was actually a level 9 or 8, so you can actually have some additional draw power for these things with trading and the level 9 draw card. I forgot what it is. But anyway, it's cool. Next up we have Dimension Fusion Destruction, their first spell card. Simply put, it's a way how to easily summon Armatile the Chaos Phantom, which is which was one of the hardest fusion monsters to bring out up until this thing came out, because it required you to have all three of the sacred beasts on the field, and you needed to banish them in order to bring it out. But hey, you can also use this thing in order to bring out true logic as well. But yeah, and not to mention that that you can also that your opponent cannot use any of the effects in response to this thing's effect if you decide to summon Archetype. So yeah, but that comes at a cost of your opponent not taking further battle damage for when this thing is activated. So perfectly understandable, but I would have wished that it at least halved the battle damage, because Archetype was such a pain in the ass to summon earlier. So compensate much, but anyway. It also the Chaos Phantom fusion monster, since yeah, True Logic also has Chaos Phantom in the name, so there's another whole sub-archetype created already. So yeah, and basically, if you control Uriah, Hamon, and Raviel, you basically get that Armades shutdown, or I should say Super Poly shutdown upon activating, but that is a bit harder to control, harder to basically set up. So yeah, it's a fine card, and if you really like Archetype the Chaos Phantom for some reason, then feel free to run a couple of these cards. All right, now we have the main meat of the card, and the main meat of the archetype. Sorry. First of which we have Cerulean Skyfire. This card basically unlocks the anime summoning condition of Hamon and Uriah, which is basically the ability to use face down spell or trap cards in order to bring them out as well. And yeah, and any combination of face up and face down. And if they're face down, they don't have to be continuous ones. So yeah. Basically, that's the same thing that Hyperblaze also does for Uriah as well, as it allows you to use face-down trap cards as well, which is much easier to do than the Cerulean Skyfire, since you're most likely not going to be placing your normal spell cards face down, since you most likely tend to be activating those instead of placing them face down. So yeah, it also gives some niche little boosts to their respective Sacred Beasts. So yeah, the Sacred Beast new support is also fine. Nothing too amazing. It won't make the deck jump to tier 1 or anything, but it's certainly a nice little toolbox you can play and experiment with. Oh boy, now we get to the a bit of the, how should we say, oddballing kind of part of the video, as Gaia received a ton of support cards. Not Buster Blader, just Gaia, and I have no idea why. First of which, we have a card which originally wasn't a part of the archetype, but due to it receiving a retrain, which is a part of the archetype, that means that this thing is also part of the archetype now, and that is the Catapult Turtle, a level 5 with 1000 attack and 2000 defense, which requires you to once per turn tribute a monster and inflict damage to your opponent equal to half the tributed monster's attack on the field. This, of course, has nothing to do with what the archetype does, but its retrain is a bit better in that regard, as we have Bombarding Catapult Turtle, which is one level lower with same stats, and you contribute one monster to special summon one Gaia the Fierce Knight, a monster or one level 5 dragon monster from your hand or deck, and you can only use this effect once per turn. It's alright, but I wish it didn't drag Catapult Turtle into this. Why the hell did Gaia feel the need to drag Catapult Turtle into this? Catapult Turtle had nothing to do with Gaia or anything. Yeah, sure, you can always make the argument it's a reference to the anime, but you need to choose when to make such references, because Gaia plus Catapult Turtle combo was used a grand total of once and never again, and that was actually in Duelist Kingdom, where it was just all over the place. So yeah, okay, I'm not gonna bother with this thing. It's actually not worth running in my opinion, because tributing monsters in this day and age kind of goes against the logic of modern swarm decks, unless we're talking about something like Supreme King Gates, for example. So yeah, we have the new retrain of Curse of Dragon, that being Cursed Dragon, Curse of Dragon. Beautiful name there. Anyway, it's a thing you can get some mileage out of. You can, if it is basic, normal, or special summoned, it allows you to add a spell or trap card that specifically lists Gaia the Dragon Champion in its text. And if this card is sent to the graveyard, you can target one Gaia the Dragon Champion you control, negate its effects, negate the effects of all face-up monsters your opponent controls with attack less than or equal to the targeted monsters, and until the end of this turn, and you can only use this effect once per turn. You might be thinking, why the hell does it keep mentioning the Dragon Champion, which is a terrible, terrible vanilla fusion monsters I spat all over during the initial review of it? Well, that is because Gaia the Dragon Champion actually received a retrain, which is pretty weird in its own right, so let's continue on. Gaia the Magical Knight is another new addition to the archetype, and it carries the Gaia syndrome, where where it starts with a promise that if a certain condition is met, that being if you control no monsters and your opponent controls a monster with 200 and 300 more attack, then you'd expect to say, oh, you can special summon this deck. No, you can normal summon it without tributing. Why Gaia? Why are you so pessimistic? But anyway, if it is normal or special summon, you can special summon a level 5 dragon monster from your hand or graveyard in defense position, and you can only use this effect of Gaia the Magical Knight once per turn. Now, you might be thinking you can special summon the new Dip and Dandy Curse the Dragon, Curse of Dragon, but I'd still prefer Curse of Dragonfire over this, since it's much better, since it actually gives you a fusion spell on summon. I think it's actually searches specifically polymerization now that I think about it, but still, even that's better than this Cursed Dragon thing. But yeah, also the archetype received their own fusion spell card, which we'll be seeing later on, but so yeah, let's move on. Now we have Soldier Gaia the Fierce Knight. Hey, you're not writing anything, are you? Well, yeah, anyway. This thing has a quick effect where you can tribute a Dragon Fusion monster to special summon this card from your hand, and if it is special summoned specifically, you can target an attack position monster on the field, change it to defense position, you can tribute this card, add one level 7 or higher warrior monster from your deck to your hand, except Soldier Gaia the Fierce Knight, and you can only use each effect once per turn. I'd bitch more about the defense position switching effect, but since Master Rule 5 is shortly rolling into the game, it's not that bad as it used to be, since, well, with Master Rule 5, a lot of monsters and archetypes which occasionally summon defense position monsters will become more prominent. So I won't bitch about that too much about that here, although the effect is still bad. And why would you want to tribute a Dragon Fusion monsters? Those are some of the better fusions in the game. So yeah, not to mention this thing is a quick effect for some reason, where you can even summon this during the opponent's turn. So imagine this: you have Supreme King Zark, you're dominating everything, and then your opponent decides to do something that would lower the Zark's stats, then you tribute him in order to bring this thing out and lose all the lovely benefits you gain from Zark. So beautiful, I tell you, just simply beautiful. Anyway, where was I? Oh yes, the next card of the archetype is the following. That being the titular Gaia the Magical Dragon Champion, aka Gaia the Dragon Champion Retrain. Requires one Gaia the Fierce Knight monster and a level 5 dragon monster, and of course this card's name becomes Gaia the Dragon Champion while it's on the field, and you can only use each of the following effects of Gaia the Magical Dragon Champion once per turn. During the main phase, quick effect, you can target one other card on the field. This card loses 2600 attack, and if it does, destroy that target, and when this card destroys an opponent's monster by battle, you can have this card gain 2600 attack. Pretty even weird, isn't it? Well, since this thing has 2600 attack, meaning you'll probably have to keep ramming this thing into things in order to keep increasing this card's attack. Well, their fusion spell card actually helps out with that, that being Spiral Fusion. It allows you to fusion summon a dragon fusion monster from your extra deck using monsters from your hand or field as fusion material, and if it is Gaia the Dragon Champion, it gains 2600 attack, and also it can make up to 2 attacks on monsters during each battle phase. You know what? This is actually good. Surprising pretty much everyone at this point, I imagine. It basically gives you an instant pop effect without losing all of its attacks, so you can keep running into stuff and basically make this thing gain 2600 more attack points. So yeah, it's pretty damn decent as far as fusion spell goes. And yeah, if you plan on building a Gaia Dragon Knight fusion deck, then you cannot go without this one. Run 3 at all times, as well as, yeah, if you can also play Keeper of Dragonic Magic if you want to, if you want some nice access to this. So yeah. And their last spell card is the field spell, Charging Gaia. Basically, while Gaia the Dragon Champion is in your monster zone, your opponent cannot activate the cards or effects during the battle phase. You can only you can activate one of these effects. Reveal one Gaia the Fierce Knight monster in your hand, add one level 5 dragon monster from your deck to your hand, or reveal one level 5 dragon monster in your hand, add one Gaia the Fierce Knight from your deck to your hand. The problem about the second effect is that it specifically searches Gaia the Fierce Knight, meaning it will most likely search out the vanilla monster, which I remind you, you don't want to run in this day and age. So you're most likely going to be relying on the first effect in order to make your plays. So yeah. Next up we have Spiral Discharge, and it's a nice little continuous trap you can experiment with. Basically, while your Gaia the Dragon Champion is in your monster zone, your opponent's monsters cannot target that monster for attacks except Gaia the Dragon Champion. And when an attack is declared involving your Gaia the Dragon Champion, you can target one card on the field, destroy it, and you can only use this effect of Spiral Discharge once per turn. Due to the amount of popping effects you'll be doing with just the fusion spell and the fusion monster itself, it is barely necessary to have this thing here. So yeah, you can experiment it if you want, and that's about it. Run by preference. And Spiral Reborn is just a simple Call of the Haunted with some added benefits and nothing else. Feel free to run any of these. Oh boy, and that was it for the Gaia lineup. Now we go on to the one support card for Archfiends. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Annihilator Archfiend, which is level 9 with 2000 attack and 3000 defense. It allows you to target a card you control and a card your opponent controls, destroy it, and if you do, destroy the face-up Fiend monster. By this effect, this card gains attack equal to half the Fiend monster's original attack until the end of this turn, and you can only use this effect of Annihilator Archfiend once per turn. Let me get this straight. You can either work your ass off to get this thing out in an archetype that does not have consistent tribute fodder for bigger monsters, in order to apply a simple multi-destruction effect with this thing potentially getting some alright attack values, or you can synchro summon Scrap Dragon and ignore any of that and basically have an easier time doing so. That's basically the real question I gotta ask when you're debating whether you should run this thing or not, and the answer is of course no. And that was it for Archfiends. And another archetype that actually got a plethora of support cards were Machinas, to my surprise. Alright, our first monster is Machina Possessed Storage. That's a cool pun. It's basically a semi-retrain, I would say, of Machina Soldier. And if this card is normal special summon, you can target a Machina monster in your graveyard except Machina possess storage. Special summon it in defense position, but it cannot activate its effect this turn. You can target one other Machina monster you control and one spell trap your opponent controls, destroy them, and you can only use each effect of Machina possess storage once per turn. Again, it's a small scrap dragon, as it's pretty much visible from the artwork to some extent, and it can also serve as decent swarming, as it can bring out a level 4 from the graveyard in order to go into something like Gigantex, which is a really nice staple in the archetype. So yeah, it's a cool little thing you can experiment with. Run any number of these. Now we move on to their high level assembly. First of which we have one of their level 8s, that being Machina Radiator. Basically you can discard one other Machina monster, and in order to special summon this thing from the hand, then you are allowed to target a machine monster you control, special summon a Machina monster from your graveyard with an equal or lower level than that monster, but with a different name. And if you do, destroy the targeted monster, and you can only use each effect once per turn. Again, this thing actually is a very fun thing you can experiment with in Machina Mechlord builds, because as we'll see later on, Machinas we've seen in the possess storage analysis as well. New Machinas all have plenty of ways of destroying their own stuff with card effects, which is actually pretty damn admirable, since one of the better archetypes that that uses this kind of tactic as an advantage usually runs some Machina cards in order to as a backup plan for their big beaters. So yeah, and which is of course Mechlords. So yeah, Mechlord players are bound to be really are bound to have a really goofy smile when they see the new Machina support cards roll into the TCG. So yeah. Next up is Machina Aerator, and it also has the same special summoning condition as Radiator. And during your opponent's turn, quick effect, you can target a machine monster you control, special summon one Machina monster from your deck with an equal or lower level, and by the way, a different name. And if you do, destroy the targeted monsters, which is basically the similar, if not the same effect as Radiator. So there's not much to point out here. Now we have the level 9 Machina Metal Crunch. And if you control no face-up cards, you can normal summon this card without tributing, but its original attack becomes 1800. And if this card is normal or special summon, you can reveal 3 Earth Machine monsters from your deck. Your opponent randomly picks one of you for you to add to your hand, and you shuffle the rest back into the deck. You can only use this effect of Machina Metal Crunch once per turn. If only it didn't eat up your normal summon. If only it didn't do that, then I'd call it a fantastic support card. Really. Such a great card to start the duel with. If you can control no cards, yeah, no face-up cards, that is, so you can still set if you really feel like it. So yeah, it's a decent first turn option, and it's a cool little searcher, but I would actually advise running a double summon now that this thing is a thing, since Machina gear frame is still a very welcome addition to the archetype in terms of its summon effect, being able to search stuff out, so you can basically easily set up a Machina Fortress with this thing. So yeah, great card. And our last monster is Machina Colonel. It's a level 10 this time around, and this one cannot be normal summoned or set. It must be special summoned by a card effect, and that being any card effect. So yeah, it does not have its own card effect listed. Quick effect, you can target a machine monster you control, destroy that machine monster and all other monsters your opponent controls with attack less than or equal to that monster. If a face-up Earth machine monster you control except Machina Colonel is destroyed by battle or card effect while this card is in your graveyard, you can special summon this card. You can special summon this card from your graveyard, of course, and you can only use each effect once per turn. So it's essentially a Machina-ish version of Pancratops, since Pancratops can tribute himself in order to destroy one card on the field, that being any card. This thing can basically tribute itself in order to basically destroy everything and anything that is 3,000 or less attack points on the opponent's field. And mind you, this thing can actually be a very decent play interrupter, since since its effect is a quick effect, so you can basically revive it with something, then tribute this thing with its own effect, and then basically nuke the opponent's field. Basically, it's an archetypal Nibiru to an extent. Great card. What else can I say? Machina Reformation is basically a discard 1, add 2 for with 2 different stipulations, but anyway, it's a discard 1, search 2, which is always appreciated in my books, so you should run 3 of these. Machina Defense Region is alright, nothing too spectacular or overwhelming, but yeah, it's a cool card to consider maining. And Machina Overdrive really drives the point home of the potential Machina Mech-Lord playstyle, since it basically makes play extensions for Machinas that also can viciously set up some profitable Mech-Lord boards as well. So yeah, it's also a decent recycling tool as well, and yeah, great card overall. And now, when this is another oddball, one card worth of support, and that is the Firewall archetype. Got some new support, and this one was a bit of a stretch. I felt like not waiting for one more card in order to have a compilation ready, so I decided to put this thing into the compilation, which is Parallel Exceed, which, as you can see, has very likely resemblance to Firewall Exceed Dragon. But the fact is, the Yu-Gi-Oh! Wikia does not treat this as an archetype card. It treats this as a by itself card. But as this thing is, it's a very weird rank 4 enabler. Yeah, rank 4, because it's a level 8, as you can see. And yeah, that's basically what it is. You can also make some rank 8s if you basically make appropriate setups for this, but good luck with that. This thing really encourages rank 4 building, so yeah, you can use this in conjunction with Firewall Guardian as well, maybe. So yeah, run by preference in my opinion. And now we move on to some other, how should we say, questionable additions to the lineup. Tindangle's got some new support, and it's not much. 1 monster and 1 spell card. First of which, the monster is Tindangle the Holes. I have no idea how to pronounce it, so I'm gonna call him the Holes. It's a level 5 with 1000 attack, and it basically does not understand the meaning of Master Rule 4 or Modern Yu-Gi-Oh! If it thought that this kind of effect is acceptable, borderline, or better yet, passable for the modern game. This effect does not deserve to be a thing in modern Yu-Gi-Oh! So yeah, it's basically the first effect is kind of alright, but also very underwhelming. So yeah, not worth it. And Stairs of Mail, yeah, that's even worse. I'm not gonna read through this because it's really not worth your time. It heavily focuses on on flipping monsters into face down defense position and basically defense position in general. But yeah, I'm bitching about Tindangles more than I did with the Gaia thing, because Gaias are not primarily designed about the defense position stuff and gimmicks, and with Master Rule 5 incoming, that's becoming a less and less of a deal. And while that is technically kind of true for this archetype as well, it's still a very horribly mismanaged set of cards. And yeah, Tindangles couldn't tick even in the Master Rule 3 department, let alone anything else. So yeah, it's They basically need a drastic change of playstyle, just like vampires got a few years back. Well, I believe it was even uh, the last year that they got their support cards, which completely revamped their playstyle. Haha, revamped. Next in line of support we have Marinces, who received 2 cards worth of support, a main deck monster and a link monster. The main deck monster is Marinces Basilalima, which is alright, nothing too special, it's just a Marinces Trap Searcher, and yes, I said Trap Searcher because if you didn't know, Marinces only have 1 spell card, which is their only, which is the field spell, and they're mostly based around trap cards, even though the swarming is their intended nature. So yeah, this thing is pretty alright and nothing too amazing. However, the real meat lies inside Marince's Great Bubble Reef. And my god, that sounded very erotic, but I don't mind one bit. This card does everything for this archetype. It's the definitive Marince's boss monster, really it is. It allows you to go +1 upon banishing a face-up water monster, any water monster I might add. And each time a water monster is banished, this thing becomes a bigger beat stick by gaining 600 attack. And until the end of this turn, of course, but you can also send any water monster from your hand to the graveyard in order to special summon one of the banished Marinces monsters. Yeah, that is kind of archetype-ish. It would be kind of a bit too good if it could summon any banished water monster, and that is would make this thing even an even better beast. So yeah. Absolutely run 3 of these at all times in Marince's builds. Just, she's that gorgeous and amazing. Next up we have Altergeist, who received only 1 support card, that being the level 1 Altergeist Puqueri. And this changes everything, as many people said, because this is the first card of its kind with this effect. Simply put, you can use this thing from your hand as link material for summoning an Altergeist monster. And yeah, and if you summon an Altergeist link monster, you can basically recycle this card back into your hand. So yeah, well, of course you can only use each of these effects once per turn, but still, this kind of effect is amazing. And if this thing was a beast monster instead of a spellcaster, it can be searched out with emerging emergency rescued. Cool. Just lovely, isn't it? Anyway, yeah, that was for it for Altergeist. You basically run 3 of these at all times. Now we have Gokis, who received 3 support cards, 2 main deck monsters and a link monsters. Goki Guts is nothing too special beside the standard Goki search effect. Same goes for Goki Iron Claw as well. However, Goki Powerload Ogre is where it's at. Their archetype, their link monster. It's a link 4, which requires 2 or more warrior monsters, which honestly makes it really generic. Has arrows pointing bottom left, down, bottom right, and right. And it's pretty damn amazing. It gains 200 attack for each link rating, which is nothing too special, but it can make this thing into a really decent beat stick. And if it is link summoned, it is unaffected by other card effects. And of course, you can now actually tribute a Goki Link monster and target cards on the field up to that monster's Link rating, destroy them, and you can only use this effect of Goki Powerload Ogre once per turn. The most you're going to do is 4 destruction effects, and even if you tribute this thing. So yeah, it's an archetypal Pancratops as well. So yeah, I should actually be saying archetypal. What was the card that destroyed the stuff? So yeah. Archetypal, I don't know. I don't feel like scrolling through it. But anyway, this card is great and you should always consider running it. Next to, what was it called? Big Ogre or something like that, which had 3000 attack, 3000 plus attack, and had really great stats. I don't know, but these 2 are basically the duo of destruction and Gokis. In, well, pure destruction, as you would, as I should call it. So yeah. Great card, and you should always consider running it. Next up on the line of support, we have Salamangrates, who received some support. A monster and a spell card. The monster being Salamangrate Zebroid X. And it's basically a nice swarm fodder as well as Xyz enabler, and you're only going to be summoning Blaze Dragon with this thing because Mirage Stelio happens to be banned at the time of the recording of this video after the recent ban list. And not to mention that most likely is designed for Blaze Dragon, since the effect when it's attached to Blaze Dragon makes a lot more sense and basically complements the dragon as well. So yeah, good card. And the spell card is Burning Draw, which is always treated as a Salamangreat card. Lovely, because that means you can also surge this thing out. Anyway, if your opponent controls more cards than you do, you can target a link monster your opponent controls, draw cards equal to its link rating, and you can only activate one Burning Draw per turn, and you cannot normal or special summon monsters the turn you activate this effect, except fire monsters. I would argue it's a bit too specific since it requires a link monster, and I'm really aching to see how this effect will prevail in Master Rule 5, where I believe link monsters are going to be just as much present as the other summoning mechanics, because that means link monsters are going to be heavily dampened and heavily reduced in terms of numbers. So yeah, it will be interesting to see how that resolves. But as of now, it's a really nice addition to the archetype. And next up, Rockets / Borals got some new support, that being one main deck monster and a link monster. First of which we have Noctovision Dragon. This is a level 7 with 0 attack and 2800 defense, and it's weird in its own way, but in a good way, because it has some nice graveyard recycling, and you can also get a +1 upon it being used as link material. And the graveyard effect, which is the first thing you read about the card, makes this thing weird, because you think, oh shit, this card's gonna be bad, but then you read the other effects and then it's, this is an okay card. It's also a level 7, that means it's a rank 7 fodder, so yeah, best rank in the game, next to 4 of course, so yeah, good card. And now the real meat of the Rockets support engine is the Boral End Dragon, and finally link monsters get the 3-headed dragon equivalent of theirs. Anyway, it's a Link 5, which requires 3 or more effect monsters, basically the same summoning conditions as Firewall Dragon Dark Fluid. Anyway, it cannot be destroyed by battle or card effects, also neither player can target it with card effects, has 3500 attack, and this card can attack all monsters your opponent controls once each. Quick effect, you can target an effect monster on the field and one rocket monster in your graveyard, negate the effects of that monster on the field, and if you do, special summon that monster from your graveyard, and your opponent cannot activate cards or effects in response to this effect's activation. You can only use this effect of Boral End Dragon once per turn. So yeah, great card. You can also use this thing to weaken the opponent's monsters and revive your own, or of course in traditional Rocket fashion, you can use this on your own monsters in order to trigger their effects and get some new ones during the end phase. So yeah, a really nice card. Rockets can certainly swarm the field in order to bring this thing out really easily. They have a plethora of Xyz monsters, have Link monsters, which they can use to summon this even more easily. So yeah, it's a nice card to consider having, and the definitive boss monster of the Rocket build. The next archetype that received some support is our DDDs. 2 main deck monsters and 2 pendulum monsters are at that. First of which is DD Dog. Cool idea in the naming convention, but this effect just doesn't cut it, man. I mean, who thought that this was a good idea? Read it yourself. I'm not going to go through this because I'm not going to be reading out pendulum effects because they're a bit too bloated for this kind of video, which is long enough as it is. So yeah, it's, if you really like it, then yeah, sure, go ahead, run this thing, but trust me, you are not getting the most out of this, and you're not going to there are better level 6 options out there. Nicola, for example, or Proud Chevalier. Oh, I think that's a level 5 actually, so yeah. Anyway, next up, their last monster is DDD Eulogy King Vice Requiem, which honestly is a good card. It's your standard level 8 goodness, which I honestly expect at this moment. It provides very easy to rank 8 builds such as DDD Super Doom King Darkness Armageddon or Kali Yuga, for example. So yeah, it has some nice special summoning conditions as well that it provides. So yeah, it's an alright card in terms of everything. Now the next archetype which receives support are Synchron Warriors in terms of one Synchro monster, that being the level 7 Signal Warrior. It requires a tuner and one or more non-tuner monsters, so it means it's completely generic, and well, talk about being unique. Unique in a bad way, that is. Yeah, sure, there is some sort of semblance of a alright effect here, but you'd actively have to work through hoops and hurdles in order to make this thing even work for you. It's way too much effort and counters out of nowhere. It just screams bad news, which this thing unfortunately is, despite how wickedly cool it looks. It doesn't even have a signal tuner monster in order to somewhat help him with the counter spewing effect. So yeah, talk about a design philosophy here. Alright, time for the semi-final archetype, which received new support, and that are Galaxy monsters in terms of one main deck monster and one trap card. Galaxy Eyes Afterglow Dragon is a level 8 with 3000 attack and 2500 attack. And Blue Eyes support waves. Are you taking notes? Because check this shit out. This is how you make a support card. If you control a Galaxy Eyes monster, you can special summon this card from your hand in defensive position. If this card is detached from an Xyz monster to activate that monster's effect, you can take one Galaxy Eyes Photon Dragon from your hand or deck and either special summon it or attach it to an Xyz monster you control as material. Then this effect that was activated during the battle phase doubled the attack of all number Xyz monsters you control. You can only use each effect of Galaxy Eyes Afterglow Dragon once per turn. Now what do we have here? Consistent swarming, very archetypal, so not many other outside decks can abuse this thing. Doubling the attack of all number monsters, meaning it turns Chaos 107 into a massive beatstick which can attack twice, even with the effect of Galaxy Satellite Dragon applied. Not to mention that it can also provide additional Xyz materials for the monster it's detached from. And what else can I say? It's a really good light monster in general if you generally have no other options, and then you special summon this, and it's basically an honest target, and you can also provide some other archetypal utility upon it. It's the textbook example of a fantastic support card. Run this guy at all times and absolutely max out on it. It's all I'm gonna say. And now we have the trap card Eternal Bond, which allows you to target any number of photon monsters in your graveyard, special summon them but negate their effects. Also during the main phase you can banish this card from your graveyard and then target a photon monster in your opponent control. Target one photon monster your opponent controls. Take control of it. Also for the rest of this turn you cannot declare attacks except with that monster, and if its attack becomes equal to the combined original attack of all the photon monsters you currently control, and you can only use this effect once. And this one is a bit on the weirder side. The graveyard effect especially. Why the hell would you want to target photon monsters for your opponent controls? I literally do not see the use of this thing outside of a mirror match. It's really that specific. So I wouldn't advise running this. Afterglow Dragon deserves that spot way more than this thing. And finally we move on to the final card, that being the last card of this compilation, which belongs to the Odd Eyes section of the Archetype rematch. So yeah, that is the trap card, the Continuous Trap Pendulum Dimension. And as you can probably see from the artwork and if you read the effect, it's supposed to help out with bringing out combo dragons. So yeah, I appreciate it, but I would appreciate more if we actually saw that third combo dragon enter the TCG, goddammit. So yeah, that's what I think about Pendulum Dimension. And finally, we are done with yet another volume of Archetype Rematch. It was certainly a blast making this, and stay tuned for the next one whenever I manage to gather 60 cards. Alright, so that is pretty much it. I'll see you guys next time. Thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned for more videos and updates. Comment, like, and subscribe. And as usual, I'll upload the next video whenever I can. And be sure to check out my Patreon if you want to keep the channel going. Maybe drop a few donations if you feel like it. Every bit helps. And I'll see you all. Have a good day. And peace.